Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I noticed there's this, it's kind of like a meme, but people will say things, I guess, whenever you criticize Andrew Tate. What color is your Bugatti? And a lot of young people really have this sense of car worship that I find to be, quite strange. I know in the past people had, you know, nice horses and something to boast about. In today's culture, in the modern context, such boasting is now placed upon cars. What I hope today to kind of convince you of, or at least persuade you into thinking in a different way, is that car worship is nonsensical and you're really just programmed to waste your money because you see car commercials on TV constantly. Now, when I was in high school, there was a magazine called Lowrider, where girls would be on top of the Chicano Cholo cars that have hydraulics. And I used to really like those cars, and my dad had a car that it was a Cadillac, and it was candy purple with a white top and really long, the classic style. And I used to think that car was the coolest car in the world. And slowly, I just really stopped caring about cars, and I realized, do I only like these cars because they're on TV? What do I really want? And I really didn't care much about cars. I walked most of the places I went. In the snow, in the rain. There's a cliche of people who are Native American, at least part Native American, liking to walk a lot. It's a very funny stereotype. But it actually reigns quite true with me, where even when I was pregnant with my first child, I would walk with a stroller with groceries home. And there were hills. I just like to walk. I feel better walking. I get car sick more easy. I don't like to be in the car longer for an hour. I'm more of a person who likes to walk slowly, think, take a look around, stuff like that. I'm not really into fancy cars. Even when I was single back in the day, when I was about, 20, 21, certain guys would pull up in their cars as you're walking, because in California, that's a very common thing. If a woman's out walking, a guy will pull over his car and holler at you. It's very gross. But even then, the cars didn't, I was like, ugh. I've never really been attracted to men with nice cars. For me, I just never saw that as something appealing. Sure, you can have someone have a bucket, but if you really like that guy, you'll ride the bus with him. One of the only people that I really fell in love with, when I knew him, he had no car, and I would take the bus to go see him. We would ride the bus together. I would take the bus for over 40 minutes just to go see him, because I had to go from a rural area to a more metropolitan area. And so, my entire life, I never really had the car in the picture when it came to attraction. Personally, I think that cars now are a way to get women to think of status and character and safety rather than, can it get me to the grocery store and back? Is it reliable enough to take up to the mountains to go camping for a weekend? I look more at a car as functional than luxurious. And I think cars like Bugatti, Ferrari, as someone who's part Italian saying this, are absolutely useless cars, and they actually put a sort of radar on you that screams, rob me, rob me. Why? Because so many people are living in poverty. So many people are envious, hateful, and jealous. Carjackings are up. You can look up the data. So, having that type of car attracts unwanted attention and actually attracts the worst kind of women. Because a woman who will want to talk to you just because of your car has probably had a lot of plastic surgery. She's an Instagram model, very vapid, very vain, very materialistic. And there have been funny videos where a handsome guy he goes and clicks his car button to get into a crappy car, the model will be like, oh, never mind. But if he gets into his fancy car, she's like, she likes him. So I don't think the best way to get women is to just waste thousands upon thousands of dollars on multiple fashion muscle cars and whatnot. This to me is quite absurd. Now my grandpa's generation, he talks about cars all the time. But he talks about the engines, the design, who made it, what country made it. He likes cars from an old grandpa perspective, right? So that's quite different to be a car connoisseur than someone who wants it just so that it can attract chicken heads. So essentially my point is that for someone like me, I'd rather have a baby donkey, Clydesdale. A car gets me to point A to point B. I don't care about cars. Like my grandpa, for a long time, he had a carpet cleaning service and I had to go help him clean carpets. It was a busted up van. Didn't look fancy at all. It doesn't matter to me. No one in my family had nice cars. Cars were not something that we thought was cool. And when we went to car shows, we wanted to see old-fashioned cars. It wasn't like elite, fancy, Italian brand or German-made cars. It was how old is it and how long has it been preserved. Now my grandma, on the other hand, was a bit different. When our neighbors bought a Corvette, I saw my grandma stare out the window and just put her hands on her hips, and you could just kind of feel, I don't want to say envious because I'm not trying to backbite my own grandma, but you could feel this sort of like, why them? You know, the keeping up with the Joneses. And it made her heart a bit tart upon my grandpa because they saved up to get a little, I don't know what kind of car it was, but it was a cute little car that my grandma liked because she wanted to have something nice. And there was a cow in the road. My grandpa swerved to get out of the way of the cow, and he hit the pole, totaled the car, and they never got a new one after that. They just kept their old beat up vans. So cars from my side of the family was not something very cool, you know. I would also further say that car worship culture is not psychologically healthy for men because it always leaves them feeling inadequate. I think it's quite selfish for people who have more than 2 vehicles. Why do you need that? You know, especially people who have elite expensive cars in a collection just sitting there, while there are cars you can donate to other people who need a place to go from point A to point B. For example, in my husband's village in very rural Mexico in Yucatan, they have to really get the community to come together just to get a truck to take the vegetables and fruits to the market to sell. Because the people there have horses and donkeys, and the horses and donkeys, the mules and such, they can go up the high trails up to the farmlands and then bring it back down again safely because they don't have paved roads. And the women there don't look the same at cars as vapid, vain, narcissistic, egomaniac city types that are in San Francisco, New York, Las Vegas, Miami, you name it. And the community comes together to get a decent truck to take their products to market. And the car worship culture isn't there. And they watch very little television, and they enjoy their rodeo, vaquero, the cowboy culture of horses. And if you have a horse, you're very thankful and you're very happy. If you look across the world, people who had camels, llamas, alpacas, mules, donkeys, oxes, yaks, these were seen as way more essential to your lifestyle. Today we have cars that get you your supplies to your grocery store, buses, but we have something very unique, which is highly overpriced, over-branded, wastes of money of cars that are quite dangerous if you drive them fast. You're going to get a speeding ticket, You might kill yourself and others. It's a huge risk. You know the guy, the white dude who did Fast and Furious? He died in a car crash. He promoted the youth to drive reckless and wild, and he died in a fiery car crash. It's the guy with the guy who did acting with Vin Diesel. I don't remember. Paul Walker? I don't remember. But I remember in high school, so many people working so hard to get those very ugly Fast and Furious cars. They'd be on the boulevard. They'd try to race each other. They'd get a ticket. Horrible things happen because of the car worship culture that came in. Now, yes, in the 1920s, there were those Ford cars, and it was something new to have a nice car and stuff like that. But if you think about it, the Amish having their horse and buggy, the Bedouin in the desert, somebody in Vietnam with their ox who's helping to pull in the rice paddies, they have a different sense of reality and appreciation rather than someone like Andrew Tate, who spends so much on an inanimate object that helps no one except his own selfishness. To me, when I see a fancy car, I see selfishness. I see a man who has failed to care about others in such a degree where you could buy 3 buckets from a used car lot and help out a poor family, and the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be so much greater. Now, if you have a decent truck, 40,000, 50,000 that you're going to use, I understand because you want to get something that's going to last. But I don't judge people by their cars. None of my friends had fancy cars that I really cared about. Some of them and acquaintances did. But I never looked down upon my friends or anybody who didn't have a fancy car. Because I didn't enjoy car worship culture, and I don't enjoy car worship culture today. So when someone who is an Andrew Tate fanboy says to me, "What color is your Bugatti?" as if that's something important to me, I find this quite absurd, which shows that you're going to work hard to pay interest to get a car loan for a car that says rob me, follow me, stalk me, attracts the worst kind of women. If you drive fast, you're going to crash, the insurance alone on the car. Why waste all that money? Because you've been programmed that this vehicle is worth it, when in reality maybe you just need a Honda Civic, a Toyota Accord, a little buggy Volkswagen, something simple just to get you to the store, to work and back, that's good on gas and isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg to find parts if the parts break down. Why do you need these fancy cars? It's just more of your money going away so that you can get self-validation through other people who don't care whether you live or die. Your deeds go with you, not your car. So you should use your money in better ways. I'm just not really part of this car worship culture. So that's not really an insult to someone like me who wants to live in the mountains and will need a horse more than I'll need a Bugatti. I'll need a chicken coop more than I'll need a Bugatti. My children matter more to me than the approval of other people who think I'm a special person because I paid thousands upon thousands for an overpriced car where if I drive it, I could harm myself, harm people in the community, and get a ticket from law enforcement. Again, I don't let the television and the marketing companies dictate my tastes. So I hope that you can take a step back and don't think someone is a success simply because they overpaid for a car that has no utility. A two-seater, it's like, what are you doing? There's no room for a car seat. You can't pull a trailer with it. You can't load it up with wood. You can't pull a horse wagon. You can't carry dirt. What is this? Cars should have a utility function. That's how I look at cars. And they should be good on gas. And I like to keep a low profile. I don't like flashy things because is it worse someone putting a gun to your head and jacking you? No, they'll do that in your poor car. If you have a fancy car, they'll do it even more. And the videos that I've watched of people getting carjacked, pistol whipped, some women get assaulted in the back of their car, some of the men get their teeth knocked out. It's not beautiful. And the criminals, because certain places have defunded police and you're not allowed to have gun rights in certain areas as easily, you are helpless. So again, I don't see Bugattis as anything I'd want in my life. Anything. If someone gave me a Bugatti, I would probably feel more insulted because it's a useless threat to my life and is actually like having a space rocket. It's just something that's going to go really fast and wow. And in California, people know how to take off tires of cars and strip your car in like 25 minutes for those chop shops, they call them. So there are tons of people who will follow you, find where you work, scope it out. You wake up in the morning, they've not only broken into your car, they've taken pieces out of the motor, they've disconnected things, they can take a seat out, they can take your rims off. They strip it and take it to an illegal chop shop. These things happen all the time in California. They just don't get reported because journalists rather talk about Trump or Ukraine or other things that don't really matter to the everyday person. But for people who live in crime-ridden areas and where criminals travel to the nice areas, you're like, wow, you learn what to watch out for. So I highly encourage you to not think somebody is a good success in the eyes of God simply because they overpaid for a car. And for women, you should pick a man based on his character, and if he has a car, and would you still love him and be with him if you had to be pregnant on a bus with him? Okay? That to me is real love. That to me is husband material, wife material. Will they love you if they have to ride the bus with you? Will they hold your hand on the bus? Will they be with you at the bus stop? If you're coming home from the bus and you ask them, can you be at the bus stop when I get off? And they get off and they're there to meet you. That to me is love. That to me is something of success. But having a magnet of a car that attracts unwanted attention and low quality attention, I find that to be absurd. That to me is corporate propaganda that has led many people to mental illness and taking on high interest debt and overspending their budgets. That is quite ridiculous. Further, during the lockdowns, when I had to go to the food bank to get food, I saw people who had nice cars in the food bank line. And I found this to be quite interesting. They had to make those payments on their car, but they couldn't afford food. So they put their car before their food. And this to me is backwards. You put your food before a stupid car. And jobs come and go. And if you're going to be anxiety ridden because you don't want your car to get repossessed, you made a bad choice. Because you bought the car and now it's like this burden upon you. This bill that comes every month for you to pay. Why have that? You can pay cash for $7,000, $8,000 cash for a car made in 2002. Get you for here, get you to there. Don't bother with it. Save your money for better things. Buy land. Buy a farm. These things will have return in investments, whereas a car just depletes with time unless it's one of those classic 1900s, 1920s, 1950s cars. Well, you're just depleting all your money. It's not really worth it. So, again, insult of what color is your Bugatti don't really work with me. And I hope they won't work with many more women. I truly hope that. Because the car is a trick. It's a mind game that we all have to get over. Let me know what you think.